Story number 1. The doll with luminous eyes. I still wake up every Christmas morning with a shiver running down my spine. The memory of that first night forever etched into my mind. It was 2010, and I was 8 years old, living in a quaint village in England where the snow blanketed the streets in pristine white every December. Our house, an old Victorian with creaky floors and stained glass windows, was the heart of our neighborhood's holiday spirit. My parents, siblings, and I eagerly awaited the arrival of Christmas. Time filled with warmth, laughter, and cherished traditions. That year, however, brought a gift that would forever change my perception of the holiday season. It was a chilly December morning when my grandmother, a kind-hearted woman with silver hair and twinkling eyes, presented me with a beautifully wrapped box. "Merry Christmas, my dear," she said, her voice gentle yet filled with an unspoken urgency. I tore open the wrapping paper, revealing an old-fashioned porcelain doll nestled inside. She was exquisite, with large, glossy eyes that seemed to shimmer with life and curly auburn hair cascading down her shoulders. Her dress was a delicate lace gown, intricately embroidered with tiny flowers that sparkled under the light. I was instantly captivated by her beauty, clutching her tightly as I hugged her to my chest. "Where did you find her?" I asked, marveling at the craftsmanship. Grandmother smiled wistfully. "She belonged to your great-grandmother. She was very dear to her, especially during the Christmas season. I thought she would be a lovely addition to your collection." That night, as the rest of the family settled into their beds, I placed the doll beside my pillow, her eyes seeming to follow me as I drifted into sleep. The first night passed without incident, but the true horror began on the second night. Around midnight, I was jolted awake by a faint sound, a soft, rhythmic tapping. My heart pounded in my chest as I strained to listen, realizing the noise was coming from my room. I blinked groggily, trying to make sense of it. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I saw her, the porcelain doll. Her eyes were wide open, gleaming eerily in the moonlight that streamed through the window. Slowly, she blinked, her lids moving in a lifelike manner that sent a chill down my spine. I froze, unable to move or speak. As the doll's head turned slightly towards me, my breath hitched, and I felt an overwhelming sense of fear. The next morning, I recounted the incident to my parents, but they dismissed it as a figment of my imagination. "You must have been dreaming, love," my mother reassured me, giving me a gentle hug. But that was just the beginning. Over the next few nights, the occurrences grew more frequent and disturbing. I would wake up to find the doll in different positions, sometimes sitting upright where she had previously been lying, other times perched on the edge of my desk, staring blankly with her luminous eyes. The tapping noise returned, now accompanied by faint whispers that seemed to emanate from the doll itself. The words were indistinct, but the sorrow in her voice was unmistakable. One night, I woke up to the sound of the doll softly singing a lullaby, her tiny lips moving in sync with the haunting melody. The room felt colder, the shadows deeper, as I watched in terror as she slowly rose from her seat. Her porcelain hands reached out towards me, and for a moment, I felt a connection, a silent plea for help. Determined to understand what was happening, I decided to investigate the doll's origins. I asked my grandmother more about my great-grandmother and the doll, hoping to uncover some clue that would explain the supernatural events. She hesitated before speaking, her eyes clouded with memories long buried. "Your great-grandmother was a talented seamstress," she began, her voice trembling. "She made that dress herself, putting so much love and care into every stitch. After she passed away, the doll remained a symbol of her presence and the joy she brought to our family during Christmas." I nodded, piecing together the fragments of information. Perhaps the doll was more than just a toy. It was a vessel for her great-grandmother's spirit, yearning to be remembered and loved during the holiday season. That night, I decided to confront the doll. I sat up in bed, holding her tightly, and spoke to her softly. "Grandmother, I know you're with me. I'm not afraid. How can I help you find peace? For a moment, nothing happened. The room was silent except for the soft crackling of the fire in the hearth. Then, the doll's eyes seemed to glow brighter, and she began to speak in a voice that was both ethereal and filled with sorrow. I am trapped, she whispered, bound by sorrow and longing. Please, help me remember. Tears welled up in my eyes as I felt her pain, her desperate need to be remembered. I will help you, I vowed. Tell me what I need to do. The doll's form shimmered, and the room around us began to transform. We were no longer in my bedroom but standing in a grand, old-fashioned living room, much like the ones depicted in old family photos. The atmosphere was warm and inviting, filled with the sounds of laughter and the scent of freshly baked treats. There is a diary, the doll explained, her voice echoing softly. It holds the key to your great-grandmother's peace. You must find it and read it aloud. I nodded, determined to help. Where can I find the diary? The diary is hidden in the attic, among the old family keepsakes. She replied, once you read it, her spirit will be free. With newfound resolve, I returned to the present, the transformation fading as quickly as it had appeared. The doll lay back down beside my pillow, her eyes returning to their normal, lifeless state. But the mission was clear. I had to find the diary and help my great-grandmother find peace. The next day, I ventured into the attic, a place that had always been filled with dust and forgotten memories. As I sifted through old boxes and dusty trunks, I found the diary tucked away in a corner, its cover worn but still intact. I carefully opened it, the pages yellowed with age, and began to read. The diary belonged to my great-grandmother, Eleanor. Her handwriting was elegant, each entry a glimpse into her life, her joys, and her sorrows. I read aloud, my voice wavering as I delved into her deepest thoughts. December 24th, 1980. Tonight, we celebrate Christmas as always, surrounded by family and the warmth of the season. The joy it brings is indescribable. Yet there is a heaviness in my heart. I miss Ethan dearly, his laughter a constant echo in our home. I hope that this Christmas, the spirit of love and togetherness will keep the darkness at bay. As I continued reading, the words became more personal, more heart-wrenching. Eleanor wrote about her struggles, her fears, and her unwavering hope that the memories of her children would keep her spirit alive. The final entry was a plea for peace, a desire to be remembered and loved even after her passing. As I read the last words, a sense of calm washed over me. The oppressive atmosphere that had plagued our home for so long began to lift, replaced by a warm, comforting presence. I looked around, and the doll stood before me, her eyes no longer hollow but filled with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with peace. "I can finally rest." With that, the doll's form shimmered and faded, leaving behind a serene stillness. I felt a profound sense of relief, knowing that I had fulfilled her request and helped her find the peace she so desperately sought. In the weeks that followed, the supernatural occurrences ceased, and our home returned to its usual state of warmth and joy during the holiday season. The doll, now just an ordinary toy, sat quietly on my shelf, a silent testament to the bond between past and present, love and remembrance. But sometimes, late at night, I still catch a faint glimmer in the doll's eyes or hear a distant whisper of a lullaby. It serves as a reminder that some spirits never truly leave, their love and memories lingering like shadows in the corners of our hearts. And as I sit by the fireplace each Christmas, surrounded by my family and the echoes of our past, I cherish the memory of that first night, knowing that love has the power to transcend even the darkest of sorrows, ensuring that no spirit, no matter how lost, is ever truly forgotten. Story number 2. The Unseen Presence. I still remember the morning of Christmas 1998 with unnerving clarity. The air was crisp, the kind that bites at your cheeks and makes your breath visible in the pale winter sunlight. Our family home in rural Canada stood silently under a blanket of fresh snow, its old wooden structure creaking gently in the cold breeze. It was a place filled with memories, laughter, and the warmth of countless holiday gatherings. Yet, that Christmas would become etched in our minds as the night when the past refused to stay buried. Our tradition was simple yet cherished. Every year, my parents would host a grand Christmas dinner, inviting close relatives and a few neighbors to join in the festivities. The house was transformed into a winter wonderland, with twinkling lights adorning every window, a towering Christmas tree laden with ornaments, and the comforting scent of pine mingling with the aroma of roasted turkey and freshly baked pies. I was 14 at the time, a teenager caught between the innocence of childhood and the complexities of adolescence. My younger sister, Emma, was 7, full of energy and excitement for the holiday season. My older brother, Ryan, was away at university, studying engineering in a city far from our peaceful countryside home. As the eldest, I often found myself balancing between taking care of Emma and trying to carve out my own space. That Christmas morning began like any other, with the sun casting a golden glow through our windows and the sound of carols playing softly in the background. We woke up early, eager to exchange gifts and enjoy the festive meal our parents had meticulously prepared. The house was buzzing with anticipation, each room filled with the joyful chaos of holiday preparations. But as the day progressed, an unsettling feeling began to creep into the corners of my mind. It started with small things, doors slightly ajar that I was certain had been closed, objects moved from their usual places, and a persistent chill that seemed to linger despite the roaring fireplace. Emma, usually the most perceptive, seemed unusually quiet, her bright eyes clouded with an unspoken worry. When evening came, we gathered around the dining table, the centerpiece being our magnificent Christmas tree that sparkled with 100 lights. Laughter and conversation flowed freely as we shared stories and exchanged gifts. My parents beamed with pride at the joy their children radiated. And for a moment, all the tension seemed to melt away. It was during dessert, a decadent chocolate mousse, that things took a turn for the Eerie. As we savored the sweet treat, I glanced towards the front door, expecting to see Ryan joining us, but he was nowhere in sight. My father raised an eyebrow, noticing my distracted gaze. "Ryan should be here by now," he remarked, his voice tinged with concern. "Maybe he's running late," my mother suggested, trying to reassure us all. But as the night deepened and the clock struck midnight, a strange occurrence shattered the fragile peace. A loud, persistent knocking echoed through the house, coming from the direction of the front door. My heart raced as I exchanged confused looks with my parents and Emma. Nobody had mentioned inviting any additional guests. "Who could that be?" Emma whispered, her voice trembling. My father approached the door cautiously, peering through the peephole. "There's no one here," he declared, shaking his head. "Must be some prankster." We tried to dismiss it, returning to our post-dinner routine. But the knocking persisted, growing louder and more insistent with each passing minute. The family grew restless, a palpable tension hanging in the air. My mother suggested we move to the living room, hoping the change of scenery would help ease the unease. As we settled into the cozy confines of the living room, the knocking continued, now accompanied by a faint whispering that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. "I'm still here," the voice murmured, barely audible yet unmistakably present. I felt a chill run down my spine, my eyes darting around the room in search of the source. The room felt colder, the shadows deeper, as if the house itself was breathing with a life of its own. Emma clung to my hand, her small fingers gripping mine tightly as the whispering grew louder. "Maybe it's just the wind playing tricks on us," my father suggested again, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. But the whispering persisted, forming coherent words that sent shivers through our bodies. "I'm still here. Don't forget me." Panic began to set in as we realized that something supernatural was at play. My parents exchanged worried glances, their previous attempts at reassurance faltering under the weight of the inexplicable phenomena. The atmosphere in the house had shifted from festive to foreboding, the warmth now replaced by an oppressive chill. Determined to uncover the source, my father decided to investigate the basement, where we kept old family heirlooms and forgotten relics from generations past. The basement was a vast, dimly lit space, filled with boxes and old furniture covered in white sheets. As he descended the creaky stairs, the knocking and whispering followed, growing louder with each step. "Father, are you okay?" Emma called out from the top of the stairs. He didn't respond immediately, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness as he scanned the room. The basement had always been a place of mystery to us, a repository of our family's history and secrets. But tonight, it felt more like a gateway to something sinister. Suddenly, the knocking stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. My father paused, his eyes narrowing as he tried to locate the source of the whispers. It was then that he noticed an old, ornate mirror leaning against one wall, a family portrait hanging above it. The mirror's glass was cloudy, obscuring the reflection, but there was something unnerving about its presence. He approached the mirror cautiously, the whispers growing louder, now echoing directly from its surface. "Don't forget me," the voice insisted, more urgent this time. My father reached out to touch the mirror, his fingers brushing against the cold glass. Instantly, a vision flashed before his eyes, an old photograph from 1920, showing our house much as it looked today, but with a different family gathered around the same dining table. Among them was a man who bore a striking resemblance to my great-grandfather, his expression somber and eyes hollow with sorrow. "He found her," my father whispered, pulling away from the mirror. He couldn't let go. He hurried back upstairs, his face pale with fear and realization. "We need to leave," he declared, his voice trembling. "Something's wrong with this house." But as we attempted to gather our things, the house seemed to resist our every move. Doors slammed shut, windows locked themselves, and the path back to the front door became a labyrinth of shifting corridors and endless rooms. The knocking and whispering intensified, now surrounding us from all directions, drowning out our desperate attempts to escape. Emma cried out, clutching my hand tightly. "I want to go home." My parents tried to stay calm, but their fear was palpable as the house transformed into a nightmarish maze. The once welcoming home now felt hostile and malevolent, each room a new horror waiting to unfold. We moved deliberately, trying to approach the front door, but the house seemed to have a mind of its own, shifting and rearranging as if to trap us within its dark embrace. Finally, after what felt like hours, we reached the dining room again, the centerpiece of our Christmas dinners. The empty chair stood as a stark reminder of our lost loved one, and now, it seemed to beckon us back. The knocking and whispering reached a crescendo, the voices overlapping in a cacophony of grief and anger. "I'm still here. Don't forget me." Desperate to break free, my father grabbed a heavy candlestick and swung it at the mirror, shattering the glass with a resounding crash. The room plunged into darkness once more, the knocking ceasing abruptly, the oppressive chill lifted, replaced by an overwhelming sense of relief. We hurriedly fled the house, the weight of the unseen presence finally lifted as we escaped its malevolent grip. The next morning, the sun rose over our home, its rays casting a warm glow on the snow-covered landscape. We packed our belongings and left, vowing never to return to the haunted house that had held our family captive for that fateful Christmas. As we drove away, I glanced back at the house, now peaceful and silent, as if nothing had ever happened. But deep down, I knew that the spirits of the past would always linger, a reminder that some memories refuse to stay buried. Years have passed since that terrifying Christmas, and the Bauer family has moved on, finding new homes and creating new traditions. But every holiday season, the memory of that night resurfaces, a haunting echo that reminds us of the thin line between the living and the dead. We often wonder about the family in the old photograph. Their souls forever bound to the house that was once their home, their sorrow echoing through the halls of time. Sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls through the trees and the snow falls softly outside, I catch a glimpse of a shadowy figure in my peripheral vision, a reminder that some spirits never truly leave, forever lingering in the places they once loved. And as I sit by the fireplace each Christmas, surrounded by my own family and the warmth of our love, I can't help but feel a deep respect for the unseen presence that once haunted our home, teaching us that the bonds of family and memory can transcend even the darkest of forces. Story number 3. The Silver Locket. I still remember the day the silver locket arrived like it was yesterday, even though it's been 6 years since. It was a cold December morning in 2017, and the snow had blanketed our small town in Massachusetts, turning everything into a picturesque winter scene straight out of a holiday card. Our house, a cozy 2-story nestled among towering pines, was bustling with the usual pre-Christmas preparations. My husband, David, was busy in the kitchen, whipping up his famous gingerbread cookies, while our daughter, Lily, was decorating the tree with her glittering ornaments. Life had been good. After the loss of my beloved grandmother, Eleanor, 5 years prior, our family had found solace in each other. Her absence was deeply felt, especially during the holidays, but we honored her memory by keeping her traditions alive. Yet, that year, something unexpected disrupted our peaceful routine. It was mid-morning when the mailman delivered a package that stood out among the usual bills and flyers. It was a neatly wrapped box, tied with a crimson ribbon, and addressed to me in a handwriting that sent chills down my spine. It was unmistakably my grandmother's handwriting, a style she had used all her life. My heart raced as I carefully untied the ribbon and opened the box. Inside lay a beautiful silver locket, its surface intricately engraved with delicate patterns and a small, faded photograph of my grandmother in her younger days. Accompanying the locket was a handwritten note that read, "Wear it to be protected." I stared at the locket, a mix of confusion and unease settling over me. My family was gathered around, their curiosity piqued by the mysterious package. "Who could have sent this?" I asked, holding the locket up to the light. David shrugged, exchanging a worried glance with me. "I don't know. You weren't expecting anything, were you?" Lily, always the inquisitive one, reached out to touch the locket. "Grandma would have loved this," she said softly, her innocent eyes reflecting the concern that mirrored my own. We spent the rest of the day speculating about the origins of the gift. No one in the family had any idea who might have sent it. My parents dismissed it as a possible prank or perhaps a distant relative trying to reconnect. But deep down, a nagging feeling told me there was more to the story. That night, as I prepared for bed, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The house was quiet, the only sounds being the soft hum of the heater and Lily's steady breathing beside me. I glanced at the locket resting on the nightstand, its silver surface catching the moonlight streaming through the window. A shiver ran down my spine as I thought of my grandmother and the bond we shared. Sleep eluded me as I lay in the dark, the words from the note echoing in my mind. Wear it to be protected. Protection from what? Or who? The next morning, I decided to wear the locket, hoping that doing so might bring some clarity. As soon as I clasped it around my neck, a sense of calm washed over me, soothing the unease that had plagued me since the package arrived. I dismissed it as a placebo effect, a trick of my mind. But things began to change almost immediately. Strange occurrences started to unfold within our home. It began with subtle signs. Objects moved from their usual places. Doors left ajar despite our best efforts to keep them closed. And an unexplainable chill that settled in the air, even in the warmth of our bustling household. One evening, as we sat down for dinner, the power flickered and went out, plunging our home into darkness. The room was illuminated only by the flickering light of the candles on the table. As I reached for my glass, I noticed movement out of the corner of my eye. Turning, I saw the silhouette of a woman standing just outside the window, her figure barely visible against the snowy backdrop. My heart pounded as I squinted, trying to make out her features, but before I could get a clear look, she vanished, leaving behind a lingering sense of dread. I dismissed it as a trick of the light, a reflection distorted by the flames of the candle. Yet, the feeling of being watched intensified. That night, the whispers began, soft, indistinct voices that seemed to come from the walls themselves. "Protect," they murmured, a word repeated over and over, growing louder with each passing night. Sleep became elusive as the voices echoed through my dreams, filling them with visions of shadows and fleeting glimpses of my grandmother's face. Her eyes filled with sorrow. Desperate for answers, I decided to delve into our family history, seeking any clue that might explain the mysterious locket and the strange phenomena that followed its arrival. I visited the local library, poring over old records and newspaper clippings, searching for any mention of Eleanor and the silver locket. One evening, as I sat in the dimly lit corner of the library, an elderly librarian approached me. "Looking for something special?" she asked, her eyes twinkling with a mix of curiosity and knowing. I hesitated before replying. "Yes, actually, I'm trying to learn more about my grandmother and this locket she used to wear." She nodded thoughtfully, leading me to a secluded section of the library filled with old family records and genealogical charts. After a few minutes of searching, she pulled out a dusty newspaper clipping from 1920. The headline read, "Tragedy strikes the Henderson family on Christmas Eve." I leaned in, my eyes scanning the article. It detailed a heartbreaking incident where the Henderson family, my grandmother's maiden name, experienced a devastating loss on Christmas Eve. Their daughter, Lily, had died in a mysterious accident involving a silver locket, much like the one I had received years later. The article mentioned that the locket was believed to hold protective powers, passed down through generations to safeguard the family from misfortune. A chill ran down my spine as I connected the dots. My grandmother had inherited the locket, and now, 5 years after her passing, it had found its way back to our family, reigniting old protective rituals, or perhaps inviting old spirits. Determined to uncover the truth, I returned home with the newspaper clipping, sharing my findings with David and Lily. Together, we decided to honor our family's tradition by performing a protective ritual that had been passed down through the generations. According to the article, the ritual involved lighting candles around the house, placing the locket in the center, and reciting a prayer for protection and peace. That night, we gathered in the living room, the silver locket placed prominently on the coffee table. The room was filled with the soft glow of candlelight, the flickering flames casting dancing shadows on the walls. We held hands, our voices intertwining as we recited the prayer, hoping to invoke the protective spirit of our ancestors. As we finished the ritual, a sense of calm settled over the room. The oppressive chill dissipated, and the whispers ceased, replaced by a serene silence. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, a sense of peace that had eluded us for so long. But the respite was short-lived. Over the next few days, the strange occurrences resumed, but this time with a darker twist. The protective calm we had hoped for seemed to attract something malevolent instead. The shadows in the corners of our home grew deeper, almost alive, watching us with unseen eyes. Objects moved with a will of their own, and the temperature plummeted without warning. One night, as I lay in bed, I heard the sound of footsteps echoing through the hallways. Despite knowing that no one else was home, the whispers returned, louder and more desperate than before. "Protect us," they cried, their voices filled with anguish and fear. Terrified, I reached for the locket, clutching it tightly around my neck. Suddenly, the room was engulfed in darkness, the only light emanating from the locket itself. The silver surface seemed to glow with an ethereal light, revealing the figure of my grandmother standing before me, her eyes filled with sorrow. "Why can't you protect us?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "The locket isn't enough. There are forces beyond our control." I stumbled backward, tears welling up in my eyes. "Grandma, I'm doing everything I can. Please, help me understand." Her form flickered, the light around her dimming. "There is an evil that has awakened. It feeds on our fear and sorrow. To truly protect us, we must confront it." Determined to save my family from the growing darkness, I delved deeper into our family's history, uncovering long-buried secrets and forgotten rituals. I discovered that the locket was not just a symbol of protection but a key to binding or banishing the malevolent spirit that haunted our home. Armed with this knowledge, I sought the help of a local historian and paranormal investigator, Dr. Margaret Lawson. Her expertise and compassionate demeanor provided a beacon of hope as we faced the encroaching darkness together. Dr. Lawson explained that the locket was a powerful artifact, imbued with protective energies by my ancestors to guard against malevolent forces. However, over time, the ritualistic practices that maintained its power had been forgotten, allowing dark entities to seep into our home. "We need to perform a cleansing ritual to renew the locket's protective energies and banish the evil that has taken root," she advised, her voice steady. "It's not going to be easy, but with determination and love, we can reclaim your home." Together, we prepared for the ritual, gathering the necessary items and studying the ancient texts that detailed the procedures. The night before Christmas, we began the ceremony, our hearts filled with hope and fear in equal measure. The house seemed to hold its breath as we lit the candles and arranged the locket at the center of the room. Dr. Lawson guided us through the incantations, her voice resonating with authority and conviction. As we chanted, the air grew thick with energy, the candles flickering wildly as if resisting our efforts. Suddenly, the temperature dropped sharply, and the room was plunged into darkness once more. The malevolent presence manifested, swirling around us with a force that threatened to tear the room apart. Shadows coalesced into a dark, shapeless form, its eyes burning with hatred and sorrow. "You cannot banish me," it growled, its voice a cacophony of screams and whispers. "This house is mine." I felt a surge of fear, but also a deep sense of resolve. "We will protect our home," I declared, clutching the locket tightly. "With love and unity, we can overcome your darkness." The figure lunged towards us, his presence suffocating, but the locket began to glow brighter, the silver surface radiating a protective light. The energy from the locket pushed back against the darkness, creating a barrier that the malevolent force struggled to penetrate. Dr. Lawson intensified the chanting, her voice rising above the chaos. "By the power of our ancestors and the strength of our love, we banish you from this home." The figure recoiled, its form wavering under the onslaught of protective energy. The room filled with a blinding light as the locket reached its zenith. The combined forces of our intentions and the renewed protective energies overwhelming the darkness. With a final, anguished scream, the malevolent presence was torn apart, dissipating into the ether as the light enveloped us. The oppressive chill lifted, replaced by a profound sense of peace and tranquility. The candles burned steadily, their flames unwavering, and the whispers ceased, leaving behind only the soft crackling of the fire. Exhausted but victorious, we collapsed into the chairs, the weight of the ordeal lifting from our shoulders. The house was once again filled with warmth and light, the protective aura of the locket restored to its former strength. That Christmas, we celebrated not just the holiday, but the resilience of our family and the enduring power of love and remembrance. The silver locket, once a symbol of protection, had become a beacon of our unity and strength in the face of darkness. Years have passed since that fateful Christmas, and the locket remains a cherished heirloom, a testament to the night we confronted our deepest fears and emerged stronger. The strange occurrences have ceased, replaced by the comforting routine of holiday traditions and the warmth of family gatherings. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls outside and the snow blankets the world in silence, I catch a glimpse of the locket's shimmer, a reminder of the unseen forces that once threatened our peace. It serves as a reminder that protection comes not just from artifacts or rituals, but from the love and unity that bind us together as a family. And as I sit by the fireplace each Christmas, surrounded by my loved ones, I hold the silver locket close, grateful for the peace it brings and the memories of a night when we faced the darkness and reclaimed our home. The legacy of my grandmother, the strength of our family, and the power of love continue to protect us, ensuring that no darkness can ever truly take hold again. Story number 4. The Cursed Necklace. I never believed in curses or haunted objects. Growing up in the bustling city of Munich, my life was grounded in the tangible numbers, routines, the predictable ebb and flow of daily existence. But that all changed one Christmas in 2017, when a seemingly innocent gift from my best friend, Marcus, unraveled the very fabric of my reality. Marcus and I had been inseparable since our university days. We shared everything from late-night study sessions to weekend hiking trips in the Bavarian Alps. So when he handed me a small, intricately wrapped box on Christmas Eve, I didn't think twice. "Merry Christmas, my friend," he said with a grin that masked any hint of the unease I would soon feel. Inside the box was a stunning necklace. It featured a delicate silver chain adorned with a large, teardrop-shaped pendant made of dark, lustrous stone. The craftsmanship was exquisite, and the pendant seemed to catch the light in a way that made it appear almost alive. "It's beautiful," I remarked, admiring the piece that Marcus insisted I wear. "You'll love it," he replied, his eyes meeting mine with a sincerity that never wavered. "It's from an antique shop I visited recently. Thought it would suit you." I trusted Marcus implicitly. He had a knack for finding unique pieces that perfectly matched my understated style. Without hesitation, I clasped the necklace around my neck, feeling the weight of the pendant settle comfortably against my chest. Little did I know, this gift would become the catalyst for a descent into darkness I couldn't have imagined. That night, sleep eluded me. The pendant seemed to emit a faint, pulsating energy that kept my mind restless. Eventually, exhaustion overcame me, and I drifted into a troubled slumber. My dreams were vivid and unsettling, dominated by the haunting image of a woman in a flowing white dress. She stood at the edge of a desolate landscape, her long hair billowing around her, eyes red-rimmed from incessant crying. "I need it back," she whispered, her voice echoing through the void. "Return what is mine." I jolted awake, heart pounding, sweat slick on my forehead. The room was dark, save for the soft glow of Christmas lights strung around the window, shaking off the remnants of the nightmare. I glanced at the necklace. The pendant seemed to shimmer unnaturally, casting eerie shadows across the room. Over the next few nights, the dreams intensified. The woman became more distinct, her presence more oppressive. Each morning, I woke with a lingering sense of dread, the image of her sorrowful face etched into my mind. I began to question my sanity, trying to rationalize the haunting visions. But the nightmares persisted, growing more vivid and desperate with each passing night. Desperate for answers, I approached Marcus the following day. "There's something wrong with this necklace," I confessed, feeling a knot of fear tighten in my stomach. "I've been having these nightmares about a crying woman who wants her necklace back." Marcus frowned, concern flashing across his face. "That's strange. I didn't know it was cursed or anything. I bought it from an antique shop downtown. They seemed trustworthy. Maybe it's just my imagination," I suggested weakly, though the fear in my voice betrayed me. Marcus shook his head. "No, it's not just your imagination. Let me check something." He pulled out his phone and made a quick call. After a few moments, he hung up, his expression serious. "They told me there's no record of the necklace being cursed. but they did mention it has a history. It was owned by a woman named Clara Hartmann in the 1920s. Apparently, she disappeared on Christmas Eve, and no one ever found her. A chill ran down my spine. Clara Hartmann? That's eerie. Do you think her spirit is attached to the necklace? Marcus looked thoughtful. It's possible. Antique shops often have items with histories, some darker than others. Maybe the necklace holds onto her unresolved emotions. Determined to free myself from the torment, I decided to investigate further. I delved into old newspaper archives, searching for any mention of Clara Hartmann. My research led me to a series of tragic events surrounding her disappearance. Clara was a young woman engaged to be married, beloved by her family and community. On Christmas Eve 1920, she vanished without a trace, leaving behind her fiancé and a devastated town. Despite extensive searches, no evidence of her whereabouts was ever found. The more I learned, the more I felt Clara's presence pressing against the boundaries of my reality. The nightmares were no longer just figments of my imagination. They felt like desperate pleas from beyond the grave. Determined to put an end to the haunting, I resolved to return the necklace to where it belonged. Marcus, ever supportive, agreed to help me. Together, we visited the antique shop where he had purchased the necklace, hoping to uncover more about its origins. The shop was a quaint, dimly lit place filled with an eclectic mix of items, each with its own story. Marcus approached the counter, where the elderly shop owner sat behind a cluttered desk. "Excuse me," Marcus began. "We have some questions about a necklace we purchased here last Christmas. It's a silver chain with a dark teardrop pendant." The shop owner looked up, his eyes narrowing as he examined the necklace. "Ah, yes, the Clara Hartmann necklace. It has quite a history." "Indeed. We want to return it," I said firmly. "It's causing some disturbances." The owner's expression softened slightly. "I understand. The necklace has a way of finding its way to those who need it most. Clara's spirit is restless, seeking closure. Is there anything we can do to help her find peace?" Marcus asked, his voice tinged with desperation. The shop owner nodded slowly. "There is a way, though it requires courage and a willingness to confront the past. You must perform a ritual to honor her memory and release her spirit from the necklace." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. "What do we need to do?" He handed us an old, yellowed pamphlet. "This contains the instructions. Be careful, and make sure you understand each step. Clara's spirit is strong, and she won't easily let go." We thanked the shop owner and left the store, the weight of our mission pressing heavily on us. That evening, we gathered in my living room, the necklace placed reverently on the coffee table alongside the pamphlet. Marcus and I followed the instructions meticulously, lighting candles and arranging symbols that held significance to Clara's life. As we began the ritual, the air grew thick with tension. The candles flickered ominously, casting long shadows that danced across the walls. I felt a cold presence in the room, a sorrowful energy that seemed to draw us deeper into the ritual. My heart pounded in my chest as we chanted the words, each syllable a plea for peace and understanding. Suddenly, the room plunged into darkness, the candles extinguishing with a final, forceful gust of wind. The temperature dropped sharply, my breath visible in the frigid air. I heard the soft sound of footsteps approaching, the unmistakable sound of someone moving closer. Panic surged through me as the silhouette of a woman in a flowing white dress materialized before us. Her eyes filled with sorrow and desperation. "Please," she whispered, her voice echoing through the room. "Return what is mine." Marcus and I stood frozen, the weight of her plea sinking into our souls. "Clara," I managed to whisper, recognizing the name from my research. "We're here to help you." Her form shimmered, tears streaming down her face. "I cannot move on until my heart is at peace. You must return the necklace to where it all began." Determined to fulfill her request, we followed her spectral guidance to the old cemetery where Clara was laid to rest. The path was illuminated by the soft glow of moonlight, the snow crunching under our feet as we approached her gravesite. There, nestled among the tombstones, stood an ornate iron bench, a silent witness to countless winters and lost souls. Clara's apparition led us to the bench, where a single, untouched flower lay, a symbol of her enduring love and the life she had lost. "Place the necklace here," she instructed, her voice filled with hope. With trembling hands, I took the necklace and placed it carefully on the bench, the pendant facing upwards as if offering a silent prayer. "Clara, may you find peace now," I whispered, my voice breaking with emotion. As soon as the necklace touched the snow, a surge of energy enveloped us. The air grew warmer, the oppressive darkness lifting as Clara's spirit began to dissolve into the night. "Thank you," she whispered one final time, her presence fading into the ether as a gentle breeze swept through the cemetery. We stood in awe, the silence of the night now filled with a profound sense of peace. The nightmares ceased, the haunting presence no longer lingering in our home. The ritual had worked. Clara had found the closure she so desperately sought, her spirit finally free from the chains of her tragic past. Returning home, Marcus and I felt a deep sense of accomplishment and relief. The cursed necklace had served its purpose, bridging the gap between the living and the dead, allowing a restless spirit to find peace. As Christmas morning dawned, the sun cast a golden glow over our snow-covered home, the air filled with the joyful sounds of family and friends once more. Looking back, I realize how that Christmas taught me the importance of understanding and honoring the past. Clara's story was one of love, loss, and the enduring power of memory. The necklace, once a symbol of torment, had become a testament to the bonds that connect us beyond the veil of death. Now, every Christmas, I keep the silver locket displayed prominently in our home, a reminder of the night we faced our fears and helped a lost soul find her way. It serves as a beacon of hope, ensuring that no one is ever truly forgotten and that love, in all its forms, remains the most powerful force of all. And though the memory of those haunting nightmares still lingers, I embrace them as a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring connections that transcend even the darkest of curses. Story number 5. The Curse of the Forgotten. I still remember the winter of 2016 as if it were etched into my very soul. Growing up in the picturesque village of Montmartre in France, Christmas was always a magical time. The streets were adorned with twinkling lights, the scent of roasted chestnuts filled the air, and the warmth of family gatherings dispelled the biting cold. But that Christmas, something dark and inexplicable shattered the serenity of our holiday traditions. I was 13, a typical teenager navigating the tumultuous waters of adolescence. My name is Lucas Martin, and I lived with my parents and younger sister, Sophie, in our cozy home at the edge of the village. My father was a teacher, my mother a librarian, and Sophie, well, she was my constant source of joy and irritation all rolled into one. That year, Christmas felt heavier, laden with the unspoken grief of losing our beloved dog, Max, just a month earlier. His absence left a void in our lives, one that seemed to deepen as the holiday approached. On Christmas Eve, after a day filled with decorating the tree and baking cookies, my parents gathered us around the dining table for our traditional dinner. The table was set with our finest china, gleaming silverware, and an array of delicious dishes that made my mouth water. As we settled in, the clock struck 8, and we began our meal, sharing stories and laughter that momentarily eased the lingering sadness. As the evening progressed, I felt a strange sense of anticipation, as if something was about to change. The room was filled with the comforting sounds of conversation and the soft crackling of the fireplace. But an uneasy tension lingered beneath the surface. It was during dessert, a decadent chocolate mousse, that the unexpected happened. When I reached for my spoon, my gaze fell upon an unfamiliar object resting on the table, a thick, leather-bound book with an ornate cover. The title, Loing Nguyen Qua and Hung Ku Quain Lang, The Curse of the Forgotten, was embossed in gold lettering that seemed to shimmer in the candlelight. My heart skipped a beat as I looked around the table. But no one claimed ownership of the mysterious book. Who left this? I asked, my voice tinged with confusion. My mother glanced at the book, her brow furrowing. I don't recall seeing it earlier. Perhaps it's a gift from someone. But we didn't order anything special this year. My father shrugged, trying to dismiss the unease that had settled over us. Maybe it's just a misplaced book. Why don't you take it to the living room, Lucas? We can figure out where it came from later. Reluctantly, I picked up the book, feeling its weight in my hands. The cover was adorned with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change as I moved it, giving the impression of hidden secrets waiting to be uncovered. Curious despite the oddity, I decided to open it, expecting a forgotten story or a relic from the past. As I flipped through the pages, I realized that The Curse of the Forgotten was no ordinary book. Each chapter contained a short story, each more haunting than the last. What struck me most was the uncanny resemblance of these tales to the dreams I had been having over the past week. Dreams filled with shadows, lost loved ones, and places that felt both familiar and terrifyingly alien. The first story described a young boy lost in a dense forest, searching for a way out while being pursued by unseen forces. The details mirrored my recurring nightmare where I found myself trapped in a maze of towering trees, unable to escape the oppressive darkness closing in around me. Intrigued and unnerved, I continued reading. The second story spoke of a girl who received a mysterious gift, much like the necklace I had found the previous year. Only this time it brought more harm than good. The parallels were too precise to ignore. It was as if the book was reading my mind, recounting my deepest fears and unspoken thoughts. I glanced up at my parents and sister, who were engrossed in their own conversations, oblivious to the sinister undertones of the book. A chill ran down my spine as I wondered who could have sent this and why. Determined to uncover the truth, I decided to investigate further. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat in my room with the book spread out before me. The moonlight streaming through the window cast eerie shadows on the pages, making the words seem to writhe and move of their own accord. As I read, the room seemed to grow colder, the silence thick and suffocating. Suddenly, a soft whisper echoed through the room, barely audible but unmistakably present. "Return what is mine," it murmured, sending shivers down my spine. I froze, heart pounding. As the temperature plummeted further, the book seemed to glow faintly, the gold lettering on the cover pulsating like a heartbeat. Gathering my courage, I closed the book and placed it back on the table. "Who's there?" I demanded, my voice barely steady. The room remained silent, the only sound my ragged breathing. I tried to shake off the feeling, convincing myself it was just my imagination running wild. But sleep was impossible as I lay in bed, the whisper lingering in my ears like a dark promise. The following day, I brought the book to school, seeking answers from anyone who might recognize it. But my classmates and teachers were equally baffled, none claiming to have any knowledge of its origins. Frustrated and more confused than ever, I decided to return to the living room that evening, hoping to find some clue about the book's purpose. As I entered the room, the air felt heavy, charged with an unspoken tension. The book sat on the table, its pages seemingly inviting me to delve deeper into its mysteries. I sat down and began to read again, each story unraveling more about my own psyche and the fears that haunted me. But as I read, I felt a presence in the room, something dark and malevolent watching me from the shadows. The room grew colder, the candlelight flickering as if struggling against an unseen force. My sister Sophie, sensing my distress, approached me cautiously. "Lucas, are you okay?" she asked, her eyes wide with concern. I nodded, trying to hide my fear. "Yeah, just reading. This book is really weird." Sophie sat beside me, her hand reaching out to comfort me. "Maybe we should get rid of it," But as we reached for the book, the pages began to shake violently, the stories coming to life in a whirlwind of dark energy. The figure from my dreams, the shadowy woman in the white dress, materialized before us, her eyes filled with sorrow and rage. "Why do you ignore me?" she demanded, her voice echoing through the room. "Return what is mine." I recoiled in horror, feeling a surge of protective instinct. "Who are you? What do you want?" She stepped closer, her form flickering between the pages of the book and reality. "I am Clara, the one you have forgotten. This book binds me to your world, and until you remember me, I cannot rest." Sophie clung to me, fear etched on her face. "Lucas, we didn't mean to forget. What do we need to do?" Clara's eyes softened, a hint of sadness replacing her anger. "Remember me, honor my memory, and release me from this curse." Determined to help, I recalled the stories my parents had told us about our ancestors and the importance of remembering those who came before us. It was then I realized that the book was a conduit for forgotten spirits, a way for them to reach out and seek acknowledgement. "We'll help you, Clara," I promised, holding the book firmly. "Tell us what we need to do." She nodded, her form becoming more stable as she guided us through the steps necessary to break the curse. "You must perform a ritual of remembrance, acknowledging my existence and honoring my memory. Only then can the curse be lifted." With Clara's guidance, we prepared for the ritual. We gathered photographs, mementos, and stories of our family's history, creating a sacred space where past and present could intertwine. My parents joined us, their faces reflecting a mix of fear and determination, as we worked together to honor Clara's memory. As we began the ritual, the room filled with a palpable energy, the air thick with the presence of forgotten souls. We lit candles, placed the book at the center, and shared stories of our family's history, ensuring that Clara was remembered and acknowledged. The atmosphere shifted, the oppressive darkness lifting as the light of our memories and love filled the room. Clara's spirit began to dissipate, her sorrowful presence replaced by a sense of peace and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice now filled with relief. "I can finally rest." As the last of her presence faded, the book closed on its own, the curse lifted and our home free from its haunting grip. Exhausted but victorious, we embraced each other, the bonds of family and remembrance stronger than ever before. That Christmas, our family not only celebrated the holiday but also honored the legacy of those we had forgotten, ensuring that no spirit, no matter how lost, would ever be left behind. The silver locket, once a symbol of fear, became a cherished heirloom, a reminder of the power of memory and the importance of never forgetting those who came before us. Years have passed since that fateful Christmas, and the memory of Clara's curse remains a poignant reminder of the thin line between the living and the dead. Our home continues to be filled with love, laughter, and the warmth of family, but every now and then, I catch a glimpse of a shadowy figure in my peripheral vision, a silent testament to the spirits that linger, waiting to be remembered and honored. And as I sit by the fireplace each Christmas, surrounded by my loved ones and the glow of candlelight, I hold the book close, grateful for the peace it has brought and the lessons it has taught us. The curse of the forgotten serves as a beacon, ensuring that our memories remain alive and that no one is ever truly forgotten. For in remembering, we honor, and in honoring, we protect our loved ones from the shadows that seek to reclaim what we hold dear. Story number 6. The Cursed Gloves. I still remember the winter of 2012 as if it were etched into my very soul. Living in the bustling heart of Tokyo, Christmas was always a time of magic and warmth, despite being a predominantly non-religious society. Our small apartment was adorned with festive lights and ornaments, a stark contrast to the towering skyscrapers that loomed outside our windows. My life was a comfortable blend of work and family, but that Christmas brought an unsettling twist that would forever change my perception of the holiday season. It was a few weeks before Christmas when I received the package. I was at work, buried under a mountain of paperwork, when my colleague, Hiroshi, approached me with a small, neatly wrapped box. "Merry Christmas, Yuki," he said with a warm smile that belied the late hour. "I saw this at a thrift store and thought you might like it." I was surprised but touched by the gesture. Hiroshi and I had worked together for nearly 5 years. Our friendship built on mutual respect and countless shared lunches. "Thank you, Hiroshi. It's very thoughtful of you," I replied, accepting the package. That evening, as I unwrapped the gift, I found a pair of exquisite, old-fashioned gloves. They were made of fine silk, the color of deep midnight blue, and adorned with intricate embroidery that seemed to shimmer under the soft apartment lighting. The craftsmanship was impeccable, reminiscent of a bygone era. I held them up, admiring their beauty and the care Hiroshi must have taken in selecting them. As I slipped the gloves onto my hands, a chill ran down my spine. They felt unnaturally cold, yet perfectly fitted, as if they were made just for me. I dismissed the feeling as a trick of the light and continued with my preparations for Christmas. Little did I know, these gloves would become the catalyst for a series of nightmares that would haunt me for weeks to come. That night, sleep eluded me. I tossed and turned, my mind restless. Eventually, exhaustion overcame me, and I drifted into a troubled slumber. My dreams were vivid and terrifying, dominated by the image of a woman in mourning. She stood at the edge of a desolate landscape, her long hair cascading over her shoulders, eyes red-rimmed from incessant crying. Her presence was both sorrowful and menacing, a paradox that left me paralyzed with fear. "I need you to return this," she whispered, her voice echoing through the void. "You cannot escape." I woke up with a start, heart pounding, sweat slick on my forehead. The room was dark, save for the faint glow of the city lights filtering through the curtains. I glanced down at my hands, noticing how the gloves seemed to shimmer under the moonlight. A sense of unease settled over me, but I dismissed it as the residual fear from my nightmare. Over the next few nights, the nightmares intensified. The woman became more distinct, her presence more oppressive. Each morning, I woke with a lingering sense of dread, the image of her sorrowful face etched into my mind. I began to question my sanity, trying to rationalize the haunting visions. But the nightmares persisted, growing more vivid and desperate with each passing night. Determined to uncover the truth, I decided to delve into the history of the gloves. I visited the thrift store where Hiroshi had purchased them, hoping to find some clue about their origins. The store was a quaint little place, filled with an eclectic mix of vintage clothing and antique jewelry. I approached the counter, where the elderly shop owner sat behind a cluttered desk. "Excuse me," I began, holding up the gloves. "I was wondering if you could tell me more about these?" The shop owner looked up, his eyes narrowing as he examined the gloves. "Ah, those are quite special," he replied, his voice tinged with reverence. "They belonged to a woman named Aiko Tanaka. She was a renowned seamstress in the early 20th century, known for her exquisite craftsmanship and attention to detail. Do you know anything about her personal life?" I asked, my curiosity piqued. He sighed, placing the gloves back on the counter. Aiko was a devoted mother, but tragedy struck her family one Christmas Eve in 1922. Her husband and young daughter were lost in a fire that consumed their home. Aiko was the only one to survive, but the loss haunted her for the rest of her life. It's said that she imbued her creations with her sorrow, making them more than mere garments. I felt a chill run down my spine as the pieces began to fit together. The woman in my nightmares was Aiko Tanaka, the same woman whose gloves I now wore. The connection between my mother's passing and these gloves was too significant to ignore. My mother had died 10 years earlier, buried alongside her cherished possessions, including her own pair of silk gloves that looked strikingly similar to mine. That realization sent my fears into overdrive. I returned home, the weight of the gloves heavy on my mind. As I entered my apartment, I noticed something different, an old photograph of my mother lying on the mantelpiece. something I had never seen before. She was smiling, wearing a pair of midnight blue gloves identical to the ones I now possessed. Her eyes sparkled with a warmth that seemed to reach out to me from beyond the grave. Panic set in as I realized the full extent of what I was dealing with. These gloves were no ordinary gift. They were a conduit for Aiko's lingering spirit, a reminder of the unresolved grief and tragedy that bound her to the mortal world. I needed to find a way to release her, to lay her soul to rest once and for all. The following night, as I prepared for bed, I decided to confront the nightmares head-on. I placed the gloves on my bedside table and lit a single candle, its flame flickering softly in the darkness. "Aiko," I whispered, hoping for some sign of her presence. "I know you're here. I want to help you find peace." The room grew colder, the candle's flame dancing wildly as a gust of wind seemed to blow through the window. Though it was firmly shut, the air thickened with sorrow, and the oppressive atmosphere mirrored the despair in my nightmares. I could feel her presence, the weight of her unspoken anguish pressing down on me. Suddenly, the temperature plummeted, and the candle extinguished, plunging the room into darkness. I fumbled for my phone, using its flashlight to illuminate the space. There, standing before me, was Aiko Tanaka. Her form was ethereal, her eyes hollow yet filled with an overwhelming sadness. "Why won't you let me go?" she cried, her voice echoing through the room. "I need you to remember me, to help me find peace." Tears welled up in my eyes as I reached out, feeling a connection to her pain. "Aiko, I understand your sorrow, but I can't keep reliving this nightmare. Let me help you." She stepped closer, her spectral form shimmering in the dim light. "You must return the gloves to where they belong. Only then can I be free, determined to do whatever it took to end this torment." I followed her instructions. The next day, I researched the history of Aiko Tanaka, uncovering old records that detailed her life and the tragic events that led to her eternal sorrow. According to the records, Aiko had kept the gloves as a cherished memento of her family, believing they held protective powers. After the fire, she dedicated herself to her craft, but the loss of her loved ones left her spirit restless. Armed with this knowledge, I knew where I needed to go. The records indicated that Aiko's last residence was an old, abandoned workshop on the outskirts of town, a place that had been left to decay over the years. With Hiroshi's help, I ventured to the workshop, the gloves clutched tightly in my hands. The building stood as a shadow of its former self, the once vibrant workshop now a crumbling relic of the past. As we entered, the air was thick with dust and the scent of old paper. The room was filled with remnants of Aiko's life, unfinished garments, old photographs, and faded sketches. In the center of the workshop stood a large wooden mannequin, dressed in a gown that mirrored the style of the gloves. I approached the mannequin, the gloves glowing faintly in my grip. "Aiko," I called out softly, "I've come to help you." The atmosphere shifted, the oppressive energy lifting slightly as if acknowledging my presence. I carefully placed the gloves on the mannequin's hands, the intricate embroidery catching the light. "I know your story, your pain. Please, let me help you find peace." As I did, the room began to transform. The air warmed, and the shadows that once loomed menacingly now felt comforting. The figure of Aiko materialized beside the mannequin, her expression serene. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with gratitude. "You have honored my memory and released me from my sorrow." A sense of calm washed over me as her spirit faded, the workshop returning to its dilapidated state. The curse had been lifted, and the nightmares ceased, replaced by a peaceful stillness that enveloped me like a warm embrace. Returning home, I felt a profound sense of relief and closure. The silver gloves, once a symbol of fear, now felt like a cherished heirloom, a reminder of the bonds that connect us beyond the veil of death. Hiroshi and I shared a knowing glance, understanding the depth of what we had experienced together. That Christmas, our family gathered once more around the dining table, the air filled with love and gratitude. The memory of my mother's passing was still, but now it was intertwined with a newfound sense of peace and the knowledge that some spirits need only to be remembered to find their way home. The cursed gloves were placed carefully in a display case, their dark history serving as a testament to the enduring power of memory and the lengths we go to protect those we love. Years have passed since that fateful Christmas, and the memory of Aiko Tanaka remains a poignant reminder of the thin line between the living and the dead. Every holiday season, as I look at the gloves, I am reminded of the night when I faced my deepest fears and helped a lost soul find peace. The nightmares have faded into distant echoes, replaced by the comforting sounds of family and the warmth of love that transcends even the darkest of curses. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind whispers through the trees and the city lights cast long shadows across my bedroom, I catch a glimpse of a figure in the corner of my eye, a woman in a flowing gown, her eyes filled with gratitude and sorrow. It's a fleeting moment, gone in an instant, but it serves as a comforting reminder that some bonds never truly break, and that love and remembrance have the power to conquer even the most sinister of forces. And so, as I sit by the window each Christmas, surrounded by the glow of the holiday lights and the laughter of my family, I hold on to the lessons learned from that haunted night. The silver gloves, once a source of fear, now symbolize the strength of our memories and the unbreakable connections that bind us to those we have lost. In honoring Aiko's spirit, I have learned that true protection comes not from objects or rituals, but from the love and unity of family, a force powerful enough to dispel even the darkest of curses. The house, once filled with eerie whispers and haunting apparitions, now echoes with the joyful sounds of Christmas celebrations, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of love. And as the snow falls softly outside, blanketing the world in white, I am grateful for the peace that now fills our home, knowing that some stories, no matter how dark, can find their happy endings when remembered with love and compassion. Story number 7. The Haunted Melody. I still wake up in a cold sweat every Christmas morning, the memory of that night in 2015 replaying in my mind like a relentless loop. It was a year that started like any other, filled with the usual hustle and bustle of the holiday season. Living in a quaint suburban neighborhood in Ohio, our home was a beacon of warmth and festive cheer, adorned with twinkling lights and the sweet scent of pine from our towering Christmas tree. Little did I know, the arrival of a seemingly innocent gift would thrust our family into a nightmare we couldn't have imagined. I was 11 years old at the time, a curious and imaginative girl who adored Christmas. My parents, always eager to make the season magical, went out of their way to ensure every detail was perfect. This year, however, there was an unexpected twist. A few days before Christmas, my parents received a package with no return address, wrapped in elegant brown paper and tied with a delicate red ribbon. Inside was a beautiful music box, intricately carved with floral patterns and adorned with tiny, shimmering gemstones. The lid featured a delicate painting of a young girl holding a star, her eyes seemingly alive with emotion. Alongside the music box was a handwritten note. For your sweetest Christmas dreams, may it bring you joy and protection. A friend. We were puzzled. None of us had ordered anything special, and no one in the family knew who a friend could be. My parents shrugged it off as a thoughtful, albeit mysterious, gesture from someone they had lost touch with over the years. They placed the music box prominently on the mantelpiece, where it became a focal point of our holiday decorations. The first night, I couldn't wait to wind up the music box and hear the sweet melody it promised. My mother helped me carefully wind the delicate key, and as the box began to play, a cheerful tune filled the room. The notes danced through the air, blending harmoniously with the laughter and conversations that filled our home. I felt a surge of happiness, believing that the music box had indeed brought a new layer of magic to our Christmas celebration. But that night, as I lay in bed, the atmosphere in the house began to change. The cheerful melody of the music box was replaced by a soft, eerie tapping sound, like fingers drumming on wood. My heart raced as I glanced over at the mantelpiece. But the music box had stopped playing. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, a trick of the mind fueled by excitement and anticipation. As the night wore on, the tapping grew louder and more insistent. It echoed through the halls, a haunting rhythm that seemed to follow me wherever I went. I pulled the covers over my head, hoping to block out the unsettling noise, but it persisted, growing into a cacophony of knocks that reverberated through the walls. Sleep became impossible as fear settled in, my mind grappling with the inexplicable sounds that plagued me. The next morning, I recounted the strange noises to my parents, but they dismissed it as a restless night's sleep or the house settling. Relieved but still shaken, I returned to my routine, trying to forget the unsettling experience. However, the peace was short-lived. That night, without anyone touching the music box, it began to play on its own. The cheerful tune was replaced by a haunting melody, discordant and filled with sorrow. The tapping returned, now accompanied by the sound of faint whispers that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. I watched in horror as the delicate figure of the girl on the lid of the music box appeared to move, her eyes following me with an unspoken plea. Terrified, I reached for the box, desperate to stop the eerie performance. But my hands trembled uncontrollably, and as I touched the lid, the tapping ceased abruptly. The room fell silent, but the oppressive atmosphere lingered, heavy with an unseen presence that seemed to watch our every move. Determined to understand what was happening, I decided to investigate the origins of the music box. I asked my parents if they knew anyone who might have sent it, but they remained clueless, their curiosity matching my own. Days turned into weeks, and the strange occurrences continued. The music box played at odd hours, the melodies shifting from joyful to mournful without warning. Objects in my room moved inexplicably. Doors creaked open on their own, and the feeling of being watched never left me. One evening, after a particularly unsettling night, my parents and I decided to delve deeper into the history of the music box. We took it to a local antiques dealer, hoping he could shed some light on its mysterious origins. The dealer, a kindly old man with a penchant for old stories, examined the box with great interest. "This is a beautiful piece," he mused, running his fingers over the intricate carvings. "It looks like it comes from the early 20th century. I haven't seen anything quite like it before." He shook his head thoughtfully. "There's something about it, almost like it's imbued with a presence. Be careful with that, young lady." We left the shop with more questions than answers, the dealer's warning echoing in our minds. Determined to find out the truth, I decided to research the music box's history online. After hours of searching, I stumbled upon an old newspaper archive that mentioned a tragic event from the 1920s. A young girl named Clara who had died in a mysterious accident on Christmas Eve. The article detailed how her family had owned a similar music box, which played a haunting melody before her untimely death. The box had been passed down through generations, each time bringing both joy and sorrow to its owners. Realizing the connection, I rushed home, the pieces of the puzzle finally fitting together. Clara's spirit seemed bound to the music box, her unresolved grief and lingering presence creating the strange phenomena that plagued our home. The whispers, the tapping, the autonomous playing of the box, all were manifestations of her restless spirit seeking closure and remembrance. Determined to help Clara find peace, I shared my findings with my parents. Together, we decided to honor her memory by performing a ritual of remembrance, a tradition we found in an old spiritual guide. The ritual involved lighting candles, sharing stories of loved ones, and acknowledging the presence of those who had passed on. On Christmas Eve, we gathered in the living room, the music box placed at the center of the table surrounded by candles and family photos. We lit the candles, their warm glow casting dancing shadows on the walls, and began to share stories of Clara, imagining her vibrant spirit that once filled our home. As we spoke, the air grew warmer, the oppressive tension lifting as if responding to our heartfelt tribute. As the ritual concluded, the music box began to play softly, the sorrowful melody blending with the warm memories we had shared. Clara's presence felt less menacing, her spirit now at peace, free from the chains of her past. The tapping ceased, replaced by the gentle hum of the melody, a soothing lullaby that filled the room with tranquility. In the days that followed, the strange occurrences diminished, the house returning to its former state of festive cheer. The music box, now a symbol of remembrance and peace, remained on the mantelpiece, its melodies a comforting reminder of the connections that transcend even death. Years have passed since that Christmas, and the memory of Clara and the haunted music box remains a poignant reminder of the power of love, memory, and the bonds that tie us to those we have lost. Every year, as Christmas approaches, I reflect on the lessons learned from that fateful night, how acknowledging and honoring the past can bring peace to both the living and the dead. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear the faint strains of Clara's lullaby, a gentle melody that echoes through the halls, a testament to the enduring power of remembrance and the unbreakable bonds of family. And as I sit by the fireplace each Christmas, surrounded by the warmth of my loved ones, I am grateful for the peace that now fills our home, knowing that some spirits find their rest when we remember them with love and compassion. In the end, the haunted melody became a cherished part of our family's Christmas tradition, a story we pass down to remind future generations of the importance of honoring the memories of those who have touched our lives. And as the snow falls softly outside and the lights twinkle brightly inside, I hold the music box close, a symbol of both sorrow and solace, ensuring that Clara's spirit remains a beloved part of our enduring holiday legacy.